In this module, we have been focusing on the executive abuse of legislative provisions. When I was a young lawyer, my state was in and out of prohibition. You know that today in India, we have two states where there is prohibition. One is Gujarat and the next is Bihar. In fact, in Gujarat, there is not so total prohibition. It is always possible for a tourist to obtain a liquor permit and he can go to the notified shops or restaurants that have a license to bar and drink. That's not totally prohibited. But in Bihar, it is totally prohibited. Okay. And we have been having a strict prohibition in Bihar for the last 4 or 5 years. We are yet to see that the Bihar is able to get out of the economic mess that they had always been for a very long time. Now, in this connection, I think we can draw a lot of lessons in implementation of these NDPS provisions from our previous attempts on imposing prohibition. That is why I talked about the Tamil Nadu case. When I was a lawyer, I remember Mr. M.G. Ramachandran was the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. He was known to be a teetotaler. He is himself dead against drinking, smoking, and you can never see him even in a movie, smoking or drinking or being bad to women actually. Okay, you can never see that. And MGR had his personal scores and he is known to settle his personal scores in a fairly vindictive manner also. Okay. He had some difficulty with the person from Kanyakumari district that borders Kerala. Kerala had always been a wet state in the sense they have never prohibited the use of alcohol in their state. You will get toddy, you will get arak, you will get Indian-made foreign liquor, and because of the Gulf connections, the state has been having a copious supply of good scotch and global brands also. So this gentleman, who was a functionary of the AIDMK, who was also known to drinking, and he always drank every day in the evening. He had a difficulty with Mr. MGR. So MGR threatened to jail or, had a political score to settle with this Mr. Balan, if I am not mistaken. When he imposed prohibition, usually under the old law, it is only the trafficker who will be bootlegger. That's how we described an illegal alcohol seller. It's only the bootlegger who will be prosecuted. And the victim was generally treated with kid glove. But he made an amendment to the Tamil Nadu prohibition law that if a person has been held guilty of intoxication and if the doctor certifies that the accused in question had in his bloodstream more than the prescribed limit of alcoholic content, prohibited alcohol, okay, not the permitted alcohol that you will get it from Waterbury's vitamin compound or the old rice, fermented rice, all these things also have alcohol. And he made a law whereby if a person has been held guilty of having been drunk, there will be a mandatory minimum sentence of 6 months. A lot of people became victims of this law. And this man, Mr. MGR's political foe, was prosecuted. He was sentenced. Because of the mandatory minimum sentence, he spent 6 months in jail. The moment his sentence was over, MGR withdrew the law. In other words, it was rumored that MGR brought about this law only to keep this guy in jail for about 6 months. He couldn't have been kept for any other reason. He was not corrupt, and he could say to MJR that what MJR says is wrong, which nobody dared to do because our leaders don't even like to listen to such things. So what I am trying to tell you here is there is always a possibility of executive abuse of legislative provisions. And let me tell you again, MJR was a very good man. I wasn't very convinced about grant of Bharat Ratna to him. But on retrospect, as a senior citizen today, I believe that MJR was not at all bad actually. Okay, I was actually a fan of another actor, not MJR himself. I never liked MJR as an actor. But as a chief minister, as a leader, I thought he was pretty remarkable. Okay, everybody is corrupt, and towards the later part of his governance, in order to support Tamil Eelam movement, his government also became corrupt, and that's not the issue. So what I am trying to tell you here is that even a good politician, decent leader, can be bad, and the law will be used for the purpose of settling personal score. This is what I mean as executive abuse of legislative provisions. And that exactly happened to Aryan Khan also. And it happened to Riya Chakravarti, and it happened to what I call that lady model. Okay, I don't hear about her name. And the law says that I should mention the names of the female accused also, but that applies only to what I call sexual assault cases and not these kind of prosecutions. Fine. The other case I want to bring it to your notice is very recently Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, had pleaded guilty for hard drug-related minor possession charges. And it's very likely that he will be released on probation on his promise to undergo rehabilitation, public service, kept on bond. And unfortunately, that facility in India is not really available to the court actually. Court cannot do it. The department can do it actually. And that makes the executive power even more dreaded. Okay, the executive can do it, but the court cannot do it. So, if the executive wants to abuse this provision, okay, rehabilitation benefits, then again, it is the concentration of the executive powers which can easily be abused. People have no other choice. The lawyers have to advise it this way only. Hey man, the court cannot grant you any relief. Only the executive can grant. So, let's probably strike a deal with the executive rather than agitating our rights seriously in a court of law. As a lawyer, I would prefer that people agitate their rights in a court of law and get a relief rather than striking a deal with the executive and getting the relief. And this will breed corruption, and that's my biggest objection to the type of procedure that is available under the NDPS Act. And Joe Biden himself very recently had said that if you take a survey of the marijuana minor possession, conviction, use cases, okay, small quantities of peddling, most of the victims are Hispanics and blacks. Less number of whites. Of course, there are a good lot of whites, and United States is really a cosmopolitan, melting pot, mixed society. All that is there. In many ways, they are far better, and they have been able to integrate their population, and surely there are difficulties. And now, most of these people, for minor possession, small quantities of sale, continuous use, all these things face to prosecutions, and there have been sentences and things like that. But this will constitute a criminal record for the purposes of employment. And sometimes even this record is enough to deny the people a job for which otherwise they would be well qualified for. So it was operating pretty harshly on just group of the population who are relatively poor in relation to the rest of the society. So these kind of laws act pretty cruelly on the have-nots, minorities, okay, who are out for some cheap entertainment. That's all about it actually. And now Joe Biden himself had said that federal courts henceforth will not prosecute marijuana offenders for minor trafficking, use, possession, blah, blah, blah. And they have said that the convictions, even previous convictions, should not constitute a bar for public appointment and things like that. And Canada again has many states in United States today permit recreational use of marijuana, which includes charas, okay. And Canada has gone one step further. Even in respect of hard drugs like cocaine, smack, heroin, if the quantity is minor, less than 1 gram, that is the for heroin, and for marijuana possession of 20 grams, 30 grams and all that, there will not even be a prosecution actually, you understand. And even if they had been convicted, those people will be released, but they will come down very heavily on large quantity trafficking, interstate transfer, all that they will come down very heavily. So the point is, sympathize the user, the drug addict, come down heavily on the trafficker is the norm all over the world. So in such a scenario, okay, possession for personal consumption, which is not used under the Section 2 of the NDPS Act, small quantity possession for personal consumption is no offense at all. If we take that attitude and go only after the big guns who are responsible for large-scale trafficking, a lot of human resources of these departments could be diverted, which is otherwise wasted on these kind of small celebrity prosecutions, often involving small or intermediate quantities. That is what is the bigger point I was trying to impress upon. Now, let us come to two more cases from Tamil Nadu. I mentioned one case where a young lady who was aspiring to be an IAS officer got involved romantically with the husband of a power center in the state of Tamil Nadu. That power center ensured this lady was slapped with a marijuana possession case involving not very large quantities, but quantity large enough to be considered as commercial. Even marijuana more than 2 kilos becomes commercial quantity actually, okay. And if the 2 kilo are packed in 10 grams of 200 packet, then there will be a presumption that it is for commercial purposes. If I am going to keep it for my personal use, I'll keep it in one packet, right? But if I am going to sell it to 20 people 2 kilos, then I'll keep it in 20 separate packets. So all that. And this lady was prosecuted and nothing comes out of these prosecutions, okay? Naturally, the romantic involvement with the guy ceased and this lady got out of the case. And similarly, I told you, when another chief minister in Tamil Nadu wanted to teach a high court judge a lesson and she got his son involved in a drug trafficking case. But luckily for the judge, the other judges in the Madras High Court saw through the game and got the proceedings quashed. But not without anxious movements for the people concerned. So because of all these things, I believe that the NCB should come up with a policy statement where, hey man, they are not going to go after the small user. And they are not going to prosecute for possession of small or quantities if it is established that person concerned is an addict. Okay? Yeah, please remember, addiction is a disease. It's a psychological disorder. and your genes decide it. And it has been part of our life for such a long time. And despite that, the number of people using marijuana in India or opium in India are much lower than the number of people who use alcohol. In terms of bad effects, both cost the same. So there is what I call the classification of small quantities of marijuana, and even the classification as a hard drug is bad. There must be either legislative changes that will be better, or at least a policy framework where the NCB comes up clear with the distinction between the hard drug and the soft drug. They will have more focus on traffickers and not the users. Thank you. We all know that Aryan Khan and his friends were arrested when they were on a cruise vacation. They were caught with small quantities of prohibited substances, which was obviously meant for their personal and recreational use. We all know that they were detained for about 28 days. All others who were caught with him were also poor rich kids. Pun, oxymoron intended. They were poor because they were prosecuted, arrested, and when it came to the crux of it, the state decided that it may not be worth prosecuting them. This the state realized after keeping them in detention for 28 days and realizing that the officer who initiated the prosecution kept himself in a situation where he owed a lot of explanation to a lot of people. Finally, the state decided not to prosecute them in court of law. Must have been big relief for the family. Nevertheless, we have to learn our lessons from it. There had been serious violations of the personal liberty, privacy, and a group of people were made to be projected as hardcore mafia drug dealers. That I think was a bit excess. The legal implications of it you can see in our course on NDPS Act. This is just a sample lecture you saw. If you like to know more about the topic, link is there at the bottom. Please enroll. Thank you.